Okay, so your 10 minutes on change agency. Well, the first thing to deal with is why have we moved to this strange word agency? Agency is, I suppose, in definition, the ability to formulate ideas and then carry them through on our own independent action. And that differs, for example, from the idea of leadership, where leadership has always been embedded in the idea of the individual being the one who delivers that action. And we saw in the last video that leadership was seen originally as being the actions of leaders or the qualities of leaders. And progressively we moved to a more socialized model in which we said, no, it's through people and in the midst of people that and our possibilities of what we get done is shaped by the people within the organization. And that brings us into the realm of the agent. So looking at change agency is to say, what is it that what is possible to be done here, and how do I get things done? So this has been a pretty productive area, and I find it really helpful for thinking through how I might go about making change, or indeed exploring what it is that is possible for me to do. And I think if you start to look at, as you go through and listen to this lecture, and you think about the people that have come in from Aviva, you would see that people have got different change agency roles within them. So they've got different possibilities for doing things at different realms. The senior people obviously are charged with being leaders in the organisation, and therefore they have been afforded agency, and indeed are being asked to take on a greater role of agency within the organisation. And yet there are people all the way down to even the people who are doing claims handling through systems theory are being given the opportunity to make changes. So agency lies in each of the realms. And I think it's worthwhile spending a little time looking at Buchanan and Badham's model. This, I believe, is chapter 8 of the book that you've been assigned, and it's available online. It really is worth having a look at if you want to understand how to get things done in organisations. Buchanan and Badham take two fairly familiar axes that we would have seen previously as well. They take on that maybe change can be, as it's introduced into a context, can be accepted, that people would see it as fairly logical, as being something that needs to happen and are clear in the purpose and the method of what we're going to do, or that can be far more challenged. It can be an idea which is challenging to the way things have been, or will mean it has particular consequences for the way people understand their work, or indeed their future in the work. And obviously that continuum from challenge to accepted intersects with the idea of, well, what kind of impetus, or what kind of necessity, what kind of response do we need to put this in with? What's our urgency? And that again reflects back into the kaleidoscope. And how Buchanan and Badham pick up on that time aspect is to say, well, it can be that change can be critical. That means it has to be done now, and it has to be done fairly radically. Or it can be marginal. It can be something that's relatively small. It can be done over a particular period of time. So it's an interesting juxtaposition of those two, and it would be good if you want to get to explore it, to go back and look at, for example, at the Nadler and Tushman model, and think where aspects like frame bending and frame breaking sit within it. So they juxtapose those two, and the first thing that they say is to point out that it doesn't matter whether it's critical or marginal. Those approaches which are above the line in the challenge segment, well, they're going to have to involve some degree of power-assisted steering. The person who's acting as change agent within there is going to have to press it to happen, because by its nature it is challenge change. And that contrasts to those below the line when it's accepted, though, where it doesn't matter how far it has to be done, how quickly and pressing it has to be done, it can still be done in a way that is inclusive and is collaborative with other people. Now they go further and they pull up four particular meta types of change tactics. In the top right corner, you obviously got a situation where you've got a challenge change that is critical and has to happen now. And in that realm, there's very little leeway for allowing agency to other people. It has to be grasped in a particular way from around other people. So it's power coercive resolutions that exist up in this corner. And if you think back to PowerCo from the first tutorial, then I think you'll start to realise that what that gentleman, the chief executive there, was doing is certainly roundabout power coercive relationships. And that sort of contrasts with if it's slightly less pressing change, then you can see that the movement is from being coercive through to being more negotiated, where it's possible to allow other interests to come in, and it's possible for the ideas to be shaped by the prevailing context and prevailing relationships. Down in the bottom one, where you've got marginal levels of change and it's going to be relatively accepted, then what you're exploring within there is that it allows extensive participation. Everybody can be involved. Everybody can start to shape the nature of what is the solution, the outturns likely to look like. But as that becomes more critical, as the time pressure comes onto it, then what you have to aim for is maybe not full collaboration, not full consultation with people, but representative participation, so that people still have the sense that they have been involved in the change, that has been done legitimately, but is being done in a suitably short time frame. So the other thing that they do really interestingly is they not only look at the tactics, but they look at the evolution of what happens within a program and what a change agent might be doing to ensure that a change initiative is carried through. And here it's really good to take these ideas of initiation, launch, delivery, completion, and afterlife, and to juxtapose that onto the Iravara model of legitimacy and autonomy that you saw in the previous week's material. Because what they're trying to say in here is to say that in the early stages, through initiation and into the launch stage, what you're engaging with is that discursive realm. You're trying to sell the ideas, draw upon what is seen as being the way we talk about organisations, and show that it is legitimate, that the ideas that you're saying should be changed are legitimate. And that moves from just being ideational, talking about discourse, through to being building your legitimacy with a base of people within here. So in the launch phase, it's all about that relational aspect of drawing people into the project. And then as you go through in delivery, it's not only about making sure things happen in the material realm, but that the stories that come out of there, that the issues that are encountered are overcome, that people are kept on side and with momentum going forward, so that you get towards that completion phase. And again, as you get into the completion phase, there's a move back from the material into the discursive, so that tales can be told of it, that we can understand where it fits and how it works, and how that's an improvement over what went before. So it's a movement, a translation back into this idea of into the material. That's not to say that you're not going to experience resistance to change in all of this one, on all of these initiatives. And the change agent's job is really to try and, if not overcome them, to understand at least where the sources, where the resistance emanates from. So Marcus does a really helpful job in there of giving you 4 potential sources of where resistance can emanate from. People are always going to be the ones that tell you about what the resistance is, but also you have to understand that the systems that are within organisations are deeply embedded in prevailing ways of being. So to change something is to try and overcome the system itself. And often you'll find it resists because it will be embedded in lots of meetings and processes and procedures, and that's difficult to come to terms with and break, if you like. The organisation itself and the roles that people have equally have got that will resist, because that's how we work together. And all of that is summated within politics, particularly around how power is what people have control over, and what they feel they can exercise agency over. So having those four things is helpful, and there are a range of anti-resistance techniques that can be applied. Again, if you went back to the Buchanan and Badham model, you would see that their power-assisted steering and their collaborative engagement is reflected here in Eccles' work from 1984, where change can be seen as being relatively selfless and agreed. So it's not my change, it's the organisation's change, and people will accept it because there seems to be a neutrality to that stuff. All the way through to in the middle, where you've got you're offering people some degree of enticement of come on board and we'll get promotion, come on board and there'll be benefits for you because maybe there'll be extra money, or as the Minister for Health once said, in trying to change consultants' minds of their attitudes to change, he said, we will stuff their mouths with gold. But you can also try slightly more power-assisted modes of it. So you can try to sideline your critics or indeed to eventually get rid of them, to exit them if they're not compliant to your wishes. And that, my friends, is change agency in, I hate to say it, 11 minutes and 30 seconds.